Welcome back to another episode of In Swine Versation, driving passion and environmental sustainability forward with Angie Krieger. Welcome, Angie.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me.
So welcome to the program. I know you have an impressive career journey, and we're excited for the opportunity to connect today. You grew up around agriculture as a kid, and now it's part of your career path. Can we get your story?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in north central Iowa. Now today, there's a lot of swine production and egg production in my hometown of Clarion. I spent my time as a kid hanging out with my grandpa at the local co-op a lot. I showed cattle and we did that together, but he's, for anyone who might have had a chance to hear me speak before or read one of my blogs, I write about him a lot. We lost him about a year ago. I was very fortunate to still have a grandparent, this late in life, but he was a huge inspiration. And I think just taught me the value of hard work and inspired that agricultural path.
So growing up in ag as a kid, was that kind of the inspiration and the culture to drive you where you are today, which is with sustainable environmental consulting?
Yeah, I think that started me on the path. I will tell you, it's been a pretty serendipitous path that I've been on. So I started out thinking I wanted to be a veterinarian, which is a noble profession, no doubt, but ended up going to law school after I got my animal science degree. Then practiced law for just a really short period of time at a law firm in Wichita, Kansas, and didn't realize it, but I was right across the street from the headquarters of what was at the time, so I aged myself a little, but it was Excel Corporation. Now, more commonly known as Cargill Meat Solutions or the Cargill protein businesses, but ended up going in-house with them at a very young age. And that's really how I got started in the pork industry. Prior to that and growing up, we showed a few cattle, and my dad and my grandfather both were grain farmers. But I just hadn't had much exposure to pigs other than maybe showing a few for my friends at the county fair. That was always kind of fun to help out. But my career with Cargill is really where I started in pork.
What did you learn most about your grandpa?
What did I learn most? I think just the value of hard work, and he was he dropped out of school by necessity in eighth grade. After eighth grade, he started working, and he was widely known as one of the best farmers in our area. And every year he had all these yield awards and I just took it for granted because he was my grandpa. But man, when I went to college and I took agronomy and realized how much science there was in growing corn and soybeans, I was shocked. Like, it was just something that, like I said, I was always around, and I just took for granted. It just seemed like he just knew those things. They came naturally to him.
Is that one of the key reasons why you pursued ag, is because he was an inspiration?
Yeah, I think definitely. Growing up in agriculture, everyone's so nice. The people are, and no matter where you go in the country, I think that's a common theme of the ag industry. I really, seemed to find my people in the pork industry just amazing. And I think that's really what cemented me in that decision. With a law degree, I could have gone several different directions and had opportunities at various times to leave pork. But just really loved the industry so much that I couldn't see myself Cargill had chocolate businesses and of course, many grain businesses, and that just didn't seem quite as interesting. So I stayed in pork, and I actually then, moved into a business role in procurement and had the opportunity to work with pork farmers in Iowa, Illinois, Missouri, buying their pigs for our plants, which was a job that I just loved.
So from there, I think you spent 5 years at the National Pork Board. And what did you take out of that experience?
Yeah, so Cargill sold its business to JBS, and I worked at JBS for a period of time. And another great experience, I think anytime you can experience, different cultures, of businesses. It helps you grow. But having the opportunity to go work for the National Pork Board was a way for me to give back to the industry. The pork board's funded by the checkoff, so really worked for 60,000 pork producers. And what I learned about the industry there, just the vast differences we have, from producers who have 5 pigs a year to producers that produce millions and millions of pigs a year, just how complex and amazing our industry is. But again, how great the people are. And I think that giving back was something for me that maybe had been missing a little bit in my corporate career. And I was able to do that at the pork board. And now, that has kind of rolled into this latest position too, with sustainable environmental consultants.
So 2 questions. What are you doing now with sustainable environmental consulting, and why is sustainability in the environment important to you?
Yeah. Well, I'm the vice president of operations for, I'll call it SEC, because that's a mouthful, as you know, to say sustainable environmental consultants. So I'm really responsible for driving our business forward, all the behind the scenes, kind of make everybody else's lives easier, I guess you could say. We're a small company, so it's pretty much all hands on deck for us, or, everything from business development to some HR functions to finance. And, I think, so my colleagues and I who are now in this space have often said, if sustainability had been a thing when we were going to school, it would have been something maybe we had gravitated towards. I think the idea of not only helping to improve the environment for future generations, but really helping our farmers see how they are part of that solution and helping them tell their story, because farmers were the original environmentalists, right? And I think that that opportunity now to really back up that story with data, that's what we do at SEC.
So the term greenwashing, can you explain that? I know you've written an article about this and wanted to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, so greenwashing has been around for a while, but it's starting to become a hot button issue again, with the resurgence of companies talking about their efforts in the environmental space. Excuse me. As I mentioned, I'm a lawyer, so sometimes these issues kind of, they strike a chord. And I was at the American Ag Law Association meeting this last fall, and there were several sessions starting to talk about greenwashing. And what greenwashing is essentially a claim that a company is not doing what they purport that they're doing in the environmental space. So if you think back to, I think when the term first started, it was in the 80s, when you had some big oil companies who were, maybe not being the best corporate citizens, or they had leaks. It was kind of like they had the bad stuff going on over here, but they were like, no, look here, look at all the good things that we're doing. But there really wasn't any science to back it up. That's where the term came from. And now how we're seeing it used is on labeling. So, companies are coming out and saying that their products are environmentally friendly or something vague like that. But they don't necessarily have the data or the facts to back up those claims. And frankly, it's a real risk as we move forward. And something that in agriculture, we have more data than any other industry in the world. We don't have to be susceptible to that, but we need to be smart about how we're making claims and then backing them up.
Any feedback on the article?
It was interesting. I got a little bit. I mean, I think there's always, of course, those folks who frankly are against big ag. And nothing you ever do or say, and I found this when I worked in the animal welfare space too, nothing you do or say is going to be good enough. But also some positive feedback just about, frankly, pointing out the issue, making sure that we're eyes wide open as we enter this new space. Sustainability isn't new, but the way we're leaning into it in agriculture, still continues to evolve. We've had some folks that we've had to, kind of bring along. And I think, frankly, it's okay. It was okay to be skeptical about it, being just another buzzword. But what we're finding now is it's here to stay. And again, farmers can be, they are part of the solution. So capturing that data and using it to support, the positive stories that we're telling, it will keep us out of the weeds and out of danger.
The key message that we should take from greenwashing.
Data, use your data. It's there, use it. Don't everybody, we go through these phases. I think we talk about, wanting to tell a good story and wanting to tell our story. And that's positive. And we need to be more proactive in how we talk about ourselves and our operations and our industry. But in this space, especially with the spotlight that's shined on it, we need to rely on the data. And again, the data is there. I think one of the things, Jim, I've learned since I've been at SEC and the work that we do, we go out on the farm and we actually help farmers to collect their data. And the data is always there. It's just a matter of, where they're keeping it. And some folks are really sophisticated in their data collection and how they manage it. And some people use, a big chief pad, and that's fine. The data's there. Just make sure we're using it.
So what about your passion for sustainability? I know you like helping producers understand sustainability and how it can actually benefit them.
Yeah, our company was founded by a farmer, and really founded for the purpose of helping farmers be part of the solution. And that really spoke to me when I was interviewing here and when I decided to come to work. So often we don't lean in, and we're humble, right, in our industry, and all of animal agriculture and all of agriculture, folks are very humble. And so, it's okay if you don't want to tell your story. Let us help you tell it. Let us collect the data. Let the National Pork Board, through the program that they're doing, or some of the brands are starting to tell that data. So I think that's one thing that really spoke to me. But the other thing is, I've heard it described as the wild, wild west, right? So sustainability, accounting, and data collection go hand in hand with carbon markets. And we're not a carbon market. My company's not affiliated with any carbon market. But I am concerned with some of the activity that I see happening out in the country, because it's an unregulated space. And frankly, there's a lot of dollars being pumped in by the government through grants and other opportunities that ultimately will drive awesome practices on farm. That situation is ripe for folks, potentially being misled. And so I think that's the other space where I'm really passionate about making sure people have the right information, that they hear the facts. And for me, that, that's great if they end up working with us. But, we've actually turned business down because it wasn't the right thing for a producer to work if they had a supply chain that had other options available. So I think, those are the two things: be part of the solution, but be really wary about who you're partnering with, and not getting too far out front of this space, because it still is evolving.
Do you have an example of a program that exists?
Oh, so the National Pork Board we've partnered with, and I love talking about that program, partly because it started when I was at Pork Board and I've worked on it from both sides. But the National Pork Board it's groundbreaking, actually, the work that they're doing as an industry to collect data. And then use that data to help with stakeholders throughout the food chain. So the Pork Board is invested in providing every producer that pays checkoff can get a free on-farm report. That's what our team does for the Pork Board. We go out, we collect data, we provide the producers with a nice report that they can use They can use it in their community. They can use it through their supply chain, and they can use it to see where they might want to invest to make some on-farm improvements. And that's where these climate smart grants come in. Those contracts are still in formation with USDA, but there will be billions of dollars available to producers through the government and through private entities who are matching those grants. So it's really an exciting space.
So you said the future of sustainable agriculture is bright. Any final thoughts on that topic or what you see with that?
Yeah, I think, again, a lot of investment in the space. So I have a daughter who's a senior in high school right now. And she said, I don't know what I want to go to school for. And I told her last weekend when she was home, go for sustainability science. I just think it's a growing space. There are not a lot of folks who have that type of education, but it's something that is just going to permeate everything that we do. And consumers are going to start looking for that data more too. Right now we're really focused more on the stakeholders like investors, brands who have made commitments to be, whether it be net zero or whatever commitment they've made, but consumers are starting to pay attention too. So I think the future's bright, and I think the future's bright for producers who lean in. But I would tell them, like, now is the time. So every practice that they put in place on their farm from here forward will be counted. But that baseline, understanding where you are today, that's kind of the ticket to admission. So folks really need to understand where they're at today so that they can measure.
Do you think your daughter will follow your advice?
I don't know. She, she's a typical 18-year-old who doesn't think mom knows much, but she did seem intrigued by it. And she, she's one of that Gen Z generation that she really does care about the environment. Like it's always kind of been something that's bubbled to the surface for her. So I would love to see her do it. I have 4 daughters, and the first 2 are going into the medical field. So it'd be nice to have at least one of them get into agriculture.
We'll get an update on that as time goes on.
Okay.
What about a few hot topics? Are you good for that, Angie?
Sure. Yep.
So 100% real pork slogan. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'm incredibly proud of that slogan. I and some colleagues launched that while I was at the pork board. I think the timing was right for it. We were in the midst of a lot of consumer pressures and a lot of competing proteins, both in the plant space and, of course, with the idea that we would have lab grown meat. I actually heard a speaker last week from Disney who is convinced that people will be able to 3D print their own snacks at home in the next 10 years. So it just real seemed like the right thing to do. And yeah, I'm really proud of that work.
So that's good to know. I didn't know what the backstory was on that. So that makes sense when you're talking about the other things. Now, what about the perception of consumer versus reality for animal treatment?
Yeah, consumers are they're just misinformed. And, as wonderful a thing as social media can be for marketing, it's not been positive for agriculture because we often talk to ourselves. And I think, like if you follow any of the trends on social media, the whole pattern is if you're interested in a topic, you get served up more of that topic. And so consumers who already have a bias, they're going to see negative stories. They will never see the positive stories that we tell in the industry. I don't know how we break through that. I think the person that figures that out, is going to be lauded for years and decades and probably centuries for being brilliant, because we haven't figured it out yet. But it's becoming, for the few folks who are opposed to animal agriculture, it's actually becoming more of an issue because they've become more ingrained and more entrenched. So I think it's something we need to continue to think about.
It's probably more their own internal thing than actual realism. It's like in a household, there's lots of stuff that goes on and a very small snapshot of negativity. But I think we need to just keep working hard to tell the story and be positive.
Yep, absolutely. And be proactive. And that's hard because when you're proactive, you put a target on your back. So I absolutely understand when producers say, hey, you know, I don't want to speak at that event. I don't want to speak out. Those who are brave enough to, you know, thank you and please continue to do it. But I don't blame anyone who doesn't want to. It's a really, you know, rotten position to be in, to have a target on your back.
So your background is law. What are your thoughts on the price fixing things that we hear about?
Yeah. I not only law, my background is in antitrust law. And I tell people this when they ask me about price fixing. I know most of the people at the companies that are implicated in these lawsuits, and I know their character, and I don't give the claims any credence at all for that. The companies in our industry are well respected and, you know, great folks. And frankly, the other thing that I can say with confidence is that I never experienced or saw anything that was out of line in my many years in packing. So they'll go on for years and they'll cost the industry a tremendous amount of money to defend. And that's very unfortunate.
And thoughts on consolidation?
Yeah, you know, consolidation is inevitable. And I love that we have a diverse group of farmers in the pork industry, in all of our ag industries. But the reality is we don't have as many people who want to come back to the farm. And so if you don't have that base in rural America to keep small agriculture alive, consolidation is going to happen. I think it's amazing that, you know, we have some younger people who want to go back and farm and, you know, raise their own food. And that's awesome. I don't see the trend ever completely reversing to where we have, you know, what we had 30 years ago. And I miss that, right? That's the America that I grew up in. But, you know, the reality is what it is. And I would say we got to where we are for a reason. It's more efficient. We don't have the labor. So commend everyone who stays in agriculture. I hope that we still see generations of these families, but I just think we'll see more consolidation.
So accountability in the workplace, this may have changed since COVID, but I know you have some thoughts on that, like a clear definition of a goal.
Yeah, I wrote a recent blog about accountability, and you know, it was really honestly inspired by my kids. A lot of my blogs are inspired by things that happen outside of the workplace that transition or transfer into the workplace. But accountability is hard. I think, you know, growing up in this industry, having a work ethic, and many people that you worked with you just kind of took it for granted that things were going to get done. And we're in a little bit different labor situation now, and you know, some different folks, different generation. The accountability is a little different. So yeah, I think defining, first of all, what the goal is, and then just being really consistent about how you hold people accountable, and that goes for holding yourself accountable too.
So what about the commitment to one person being accountable?
I have a colleague, and we heard this from someone I worked with at Pork Board who was awesome. I loved working for him. And he would always ask at the end of the meeting, who's feeding the dog? And I think it's just it's an easy thing to say, but we've all experienced this, right? I experienced it just this last week at home. Who's feeding the dog? Well, everybody was, but nobody did. And so I got home from work and it was like, who fed the dog? Well, I thought you did. And so I think it's just really important to have that one person that is, you know, they're not always responsible. But if somebody doesn't feed the dog in my house, I'm accountable because I didn't ensure that someone else did it.
And what about consequences for underperformance? This might be different now because post-COVID, recruiting is an issue, but what are your thoughts on the consequences?
Yeah, I think let's face it, there are always consequences, whether we define them or they just end up happening. And so I think what I've found, over my career and being a mom too, again, I draw a lot of this from my outside of work life. If you don't hold someone accountable and they face that consequence of, maybe it's mom's disappointed, or, hey, you get your phone taken away. That's a big deal. The reverse of that is resentment grows. So if you don't hold somebody accountable for something, you're still keeping a mental note of that. Right. And I think it's better just to do it, say it, be done with it, move on. But you're right. I think people are more hesitant to hold people accountable because, okay, well, I need I need a body. I need that person. They might not be doing the best job, but at least they're there. I can tell you, we face that. We have a pizza place. My partner and I do, and we have some really great kids that work for us, but we have a few that, they kind of show up, they go through the motions, but we're in a labor situation that sometimes you need a body. And that's unfortunate. I think a lot of us are going through that right now with the tight labor market.
So you have a pizza place. What's your favorite pizza?
Bacon cheeseburger actually is my favorite at our place. Like it, and I'm a really big taco pizza fan too. I think that might be more of a Midwest thing, but I love taco pizza too.
Yeah, well,
what about you?
It depends on the place.
Yeah.
So there's a good formaggio pizza at this nice place in Prince Edward County in Canada, but depends on where you go.
Yeah. Yep.
So let's wrap on being a little futuristic. Is there one thing that you see that we need to be appraised of 10 years out in the pork industry?
Oh, wow. I'm going to say something just groundbreaking here. Change, change, and more change. I think I was just saying this to someone that works for me today when, going back to grandpa, right? He always said the only thing certain in life is death and taxes, but I think he was wrong because I think he missed change, and the rate of change just continues to be more and more. So, I think we will see a lot of technology in the next 10 years. I hope that we don't see consumers moving away from red meat, from protein. I'm bullish protein. I think, like we've got a world to feed, and there's nothing better than animal protein to feed them. But I think we've got to all be prepared for change. And that's how we need to choose talent too. I mean, when I'm interviewing folks, I want to understand if they're going to be resilient to change, because we can't slow down. Change isn't going to slow down.
We just have to adapt to change in our surroundings and keep that ball moving.
Yep, absolutely.
Angie Krieger, thanks for the great Swine Versation today.
Thank you so much.